Hey, my Reddit story lovers, welcome back to Bedtime Blocks. Tonight's story is a raw, emotional journey about love, betrayal, and the shattering of trust when secrets come to light. It's about what happens when the person you thought you knew best turns out to be living a life you never saw coming. So settle in, get cozy, and let this one carry you away. I didn't find out from her. That's the part that stings the most. We'd been together for almost 3 years. 3 years of late night drives, cheap takeout dinners, and talking about stupid dreams that never made sense. I thought I knew everything about her. Hell, I thought she trusted me with everything. It was a Thursday night when I found out. I'd just gotten home from work, kicked off my boots, and opened my laptop to unwind. A buddy of mine sent me a link. No context, just, "Yo, is this your girl?" Followed by 3 laughing emojis. My stomach dropped before I even clicked. Curiosity won. And there she was. Same brown hair, same little tattoo near her collarbone, the same gold necklace I bought her last Christmas. But she wasn't wearing much else. The username was different, but there was no mistaking her. It was her voice too. Soft, almost shy, just like I'd heard 100 times in our own bedroom. I just stared at the screen. My chest felt like someone had dropped a cinder block on it. This wasn't some random modeling gig or boudoir photo shoot. It was OnlyFans. I sat there waiting for some kind of explanation to magically appear on the page, but all I saw was a subscribe button and a paywall. My brain kept cycling between confusion, anger, and something that felt like betrayal. The worst part? I couldn't even decide if I had the right to feel that way, because I didn't know if she did this before me or if she started while we were together. And now I couldn't stop wondering why she never told me. I sat there for a long time, staring at the glowing screen like it might give me answers if I looked hard enough. My mind kept going back to every conversation we'd had over the past few months. The way she sometimes dodged questions about where she was going. The sudden upgrades to her wardrobe. The late night, "I'm just hanging out with friends." Texts that didn't always make sense. But I trusted her. I never wanted to be the kind of boyfriend who kept tabs or demanded proof. That's not how a healthy relationship works, right? After about 20 minutes, I slammed my laptop shut. My heart was pounding, and I felt hot all over, like I just run a mile in the middle of summer. I grabbed my phone, opened our messages, and typed, "Hey, can you come over? We need to talk." It sat there unsent for a full minute. My thumb hovered over the send button, but something stopped me. What was I even going to say? "Hey babe, just wondering why my friend can see you naked online?" In the end, I just sent, "You busy?" She replied in under a minute. "Nope, what's up?" "Can you come over?" "Yeah, give me 30. Those 30 minutes dragged like hours. I paced my apartment, running my hands through my hair, trying to rehearse what I was going to say. The truth was, I didn't even know if I wanted an explanation or if I just wanted to tell her to get out of my life. When she finally knocked on my door, she looked exactly the same as always. Smiling, casual, wearing that hoodie I'd given her last winter, like nothing was wrong. Like my entire world hadn't tilted on its axis in the last hour. I let her in. My voice sounded tight when I said, "We need to talk." Her smile faded instantly. "Okay, what's going on?" I swallowed hard. I saw something. Online. Her eyebrows knit together, and for a moment I almost believed she didn't know what I meant. But then her face changed, just slightly. Like a tiny flicker of panic she tried to cover up. "What do you mean?" she asked carefully. I didn't break eye contact. Only fans. Her lips parted, but no sound came out at first. She blinked, looked down, then back at me. "Who showed you?" That was her first question. Not, "What are you talking about?" or, "That's not me." Just, "Who showed me?" "A friend," I said flatly. "Does it matter?" She let out a slow breath and sat down on my couch, her fingers twisting together. "I was going to tell you, I just didn't know how." Didn't know how? We've been together 3 years, Jenna. When exactly were you planning on telling me? On our wedding day? She flinched, but I wasn't yelling. I wasn't even angry, at least not in the loud, explosive way I thought I'd be. I just felt hollow. I started before we met, she said quietly. It was just photos at first, nothing crazy. I needed money for school and it was easy. Then, after we got together, I stopped for a while. But things got tight last year. Rent went up, my hours got cut. I didn't want to ask you for help, so I went back to it. I stared at her. You went back to it without telling me. She nodded, her eyes shiny now. I was scared you'd leave me. I laughed, sharp, bitter. So instead of being honest, you just hid it and hoped I wouldn't find out? Tears spilled down her cheeks and she shook her head. It's not like I'm with anyone else. It's just content. Pictures, videos, solo stuff. My stomach turned. I didn't want the details. I didn't want to picture it. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of my refrigerator. Finally, I said, You broke my trust, Jenna. It's not about the site. It's about lying to me for months. She wiped her face and whispered, I love you. I didn't want to lose you. And the worst part was, I still loved her too. I didn't say anything for a long time. Her words hung in the air between us like smoke, thick, suffocating. Part of me wanted to tell her to pack her stuff and leave. Another part wanted to grab her and just hold her until the world made sense again. Instead, I asked the question I didn't even want the answer to. How many people know? She hesitated. I don't know exactly, a few hundred subscribers. The number hit me like a slap. A few hundred. She nodded slowly, eyes locked on the carpet. And you don't think that matters? I asked, my voice low. You don't think it matters that hundreds of people see you like that, but your boyfriend has to find out from a friend? Her face crumpled. I didn't want you to see me differently. I do see you differently, I said, my throat tight. Because now I know you've been lying to me for months. You think that's something I can just unknow? She covered her face with her hands, and for the first time, I felt my anger start to falter. She wasn't some villain twirling her mustache. She was just human, flawed, desperate. I sat down across from her. I'm not judging you for doing it, Jenna. I'm judging you for hiding it. Her eyes met mine, watery and red. Can we work through this? I didn't answer right away. I didn't know if we could. But the thought of her walking out of my life made my chest ache. That night, she stayed. We didn't cuddle. We didn't kiss. We just lay there, back to back, in the same bed, both pretending to sleep. I could hear her breathing, uneven, almost shaky, and I knew she wasn't asleep either. My mind kept running through possibilities. Was this the hill I wanted our relationship to die on? Could I live with the fact that she had an online persona like that? Could I rebuild trust after something like this? The next morning, over coffee, I finally asked, If we stay together, are you willing to stop? She looked down at her mug. It's not that simple. It is that simple, I said. You either want to be with me enough to give it up, or you don't. Her jaw tightened. You don't understand. This is my income now. I make more in a week there than I do in a month at my job. If I stop, I can't afford rent. I leaned back, letting that sink in. So, you're saying money is more important than us? Her voice broke. Number eight, I'm saying I don't want to depend on you. I've been independent my whole life, and I'm scared to lose that. It was twisted. Part of me admired that. But another part couldn't get past the fact that she was prioritizing strangers over my feelings. I left for work without giving her an answer. Over the next week, we danced around it. Some days she'd send me a cute text like nothing had happened. Other days, I'd catch her avoiding eye contact. knowing she was filming content when she said she was working on school stuff. One night, my buddy, the same one who'd sent me the link, messaged me again. Bro, she just posted something new. I stared at the message for a long time before finally opening the link. This time, there was no mistaking the intimacy. It wasn't just teasing or implied content, it was explicit. More than I'd ever seen her do with me on camera because, well, we'd never filmed anything together. My stomach churned. I felt sick. The next morning, I confronted her. You said it was just pictures, like maybe some videos, solo stuff. But I saw the new post. Her face went pale. You're checking my page? I shouldn't have to check your page, I snapped. But I have to because you keep lying. She tried to explain. It was a one-time thing. She needed a bump in subscribers. She didn't think it mattered because it wasn't real. But the more she talked, the more I realized she and I weren't living in the same reality anymore. That was the moment I knew something had to give. I told her I needed space. I packed a bag and went to crash at my brother's place for a few days. The first night away, I expected to feel relief, but instead I just felt empty. I missed her laugh and the way she curled up next to me when she was cold, the little text she sent me in the middle of the day. But I also remembered how I'd felt seeing her on that screen, that sharp sting in my chest, that sense of being the last to know something everyone else already knew. On the third day, she called me. Can we talk? Please. We met at a coffee shop. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun. She didn't waste time. I deleted my account. I stared at her. You what? I deleted it. I can't fix what I did, but I can stop doing it. I don't want to lose you. My throat tightened. Why now? Because, she said softly, I realized I cared more about strangers on the internet than the person I love most. And that's messed up. It wasn't instant forgiveness. It wasn't a magic fix, but it was a start. We sat there in that little coffee shop for hours. Neither of us touched our drinks much. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe she had really deleted the account and that we could move forward from this. But the trust between us felt like a cracked windshield. Sure, you can patch it, but you'll always see the lines if you look close enough. Over the next few weeks, we tried. She'd text me pictures of her dinner just like she used to. I'd call her on my lunch break. We went for late-night drives again, holding hands like before. Slowly, that constant knot in my stomach started to loosen. One night, while we were watching a movie on my couch, she leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for giving me another chance." I kissed her hair and told her, "We'll be okay." And for the first time in months, I believed it. Things were normal. At least they looked normal from the outside. But underneath, I still caught myself wondering sometimes. If she went to the bathroom and took her phone, a part of me wondered what she was doing. If she had to work late, I questioned it in my head, even if I didn't say anything out loud. I kept telling myself that trust takes time, that this was part of the process. Then about 2 months later, I was scrolling through Instagram when a random post caught my eye. It was a meme page, nothing to do with her, but the comments were full of guys tagging each other laughing. And right there in one of the threads was a screenshot. A very familiar screenshot. It was Jenna. Same tattoo. Same gold necklace. But this wasn't from her old OnlyFans, it was new. And the username wasn't hers anymore. It was something different. My chest tightened. I didn't confront her right away. I wanted to be absolutely sure. So I went down the rabbit hole. Search engines, reverse image searches, digging through tags. It didn't take long to find it. She hadn't stopped. She'd just moved to a new account under a different name. Same content style. Same apartment background. Same voice in the videos. My hands were shaking when I closed the laptop. That night, I didn't invite her over. I didn't answer her texts. I just sat in my apartment staring at the wall, trying to figure out if I was more angry or just numb. When I finally did call her, I didn't tell her what I knew. I just said, "Hey, can we meet tomorrow? I want to talk." She agreed instantly. We met at the park. It was a cold, gray afternoon, the kind where the wind cuts right through your jacket. She smiled when she saw me, but it faded fast when she noticed my face. "What's wrong?" she asked. I looked her straight in the eyes. "You didn't stop." She froze. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I said, my voice low. "New username, same content, same apartment." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She looked away, biting her lip. "I can't believe you made me feel guilty for not trusting you," I said. "And the whole time you were proving me right." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, I didn't know how to tell you." "You lied to me." Again. And just like that, the little hope I'd been holding onto slipped through my fingers. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "You don't get it," I said. "It's not just the content. It's that you keep making choices for me, deciding what I can and can't know. You never gave me the chance to decide for myself if I could handle it." Her voice cracked. "I didn't want to lose you." "You already did." For a long time, neither of us moved. The wind whipped around us, and the park felt emptier than it had a minute ago. Finally, she nodded, wiped her eyes, and walked away without looking back. I watched her go, my chest aching in that dull, familiar way you get when something breaks inside you. I knew this time it was over for good, but part of me also knew I'd never look at trust the same way again. The first few days after we broke up felt unreal. My apartment was too quiet. Her toothbrush was still in my bathroom. Her hoodie was still draped over the back of my couch. I told myself I'd drop her things off when I was ready, but the truth was, I wasn't ready to face her again. It's strange how a person can still feel everywhere after they're gone. I'd hear a song we used to play in the car, and my stomach would twist. I'd get a craving for that Thai place we always ordered from, and immediately lose my appetite. And yet, there was also a weight that had lifted. No more guessing, no more wondering if she was telling the truth. The finality hurt, but it was clean. A week later, I got a text from an unknown number. Just one sentence. "I really did love you." I stared at it for a long time before deleting it. People always talk about betrayal like it's a big, dramatic explosion, but that's not how it felt for me. It wasn't a single moment. It was a slow erosion, like waves eating away at the base of a cliff until one day, the whole thing just collapses. Looking back, I don't think Jenna set out to hurt me. I think she was trying to survive in her own way. I think she told herself the lies were small, that she'd explain later, that she'd stop eventually. But eventually never came. And maybe that's the part that still stings. Not the account, not the content, just the fact that the person I trusted most looked me in the eyes and told me something I wanted to hear, knowing it wasn't true. I've been single for a few months now. I've gone on a couple of dates, nothing serious. Every time someone new smiles at me across a table, I feel a flicker of hope, followed by a shadow of doubt. Trust isn't something you can just switch back on, but I'm learning. If there's one thing I took from all of this, it's that love without honesty isn't really love. It's just a performance. And no matter how good the performance is, it'll never last. So maybe one day I'll find someone who understands that. And when I do, I'll make sure we both know that the only way to keep something real is to keep it real. Until then, I'm okay. 2 weeks after deleting her number, I saw her again. Not in person, on my phone. One of my friends had sent me a screenshot from a dating app. Her profile picture was different, hair darker, but it was her. Same smirk I used to love. Her bio read, "Not looking for anything serious, just seeing what's out there." It was like a punch to the gut. Part of me wanted to laugh. She wasted no time. Another part wanted to throw my phone across the room. But I didn't reply to my friend, didn't make a comment. I just sat there staring at the photo until my coffee went cold. That night, I caught myself wondering who she was texting. If she'd already found someone new to fill the space I'd left. The worst part? I wasn't jealous because I wanted her back. I was jealous because I didn't want anyone else to have the parts of her I once thought were mine. I tried distracting myself, hitting the gym more, hanging out with friends, working late. But grief is funny like that. It finds you in the quiet moments. You can be laughing at a joke one minute, then zoning out the next, lost in a memory you didn't invite. One night, I ended up walking past the bar where we'd had our first date. I hadn't meant to, it was just on my route home, but my feet slowed anyway. I stood there for a minute, staring through the window at the same corner booth we'd sat in. I could almost see us there, her laughing with her head tilted back, me leaning in too far because I couldn't get enough of her voice. Then the door opened, and the smell of beer and fried food snapped me back to the present. I walked away quickly, pulling my jacket tighter around me. A month later, I got a message from an unfamiliar Instagram account. It was private, no profile picture. The request read, "You don't know me, but I think we need to talk about Jenna." I almost ignored it, probably a scam, but curiosity got the better of me. I accepted the message. The person claimed to be another guy she'd been seeing. They said they'd met her online and she'd told them she was single, that they'd gone out a few times, hooked up, and then, out of nowhere, she'd ghosted him. The kicker? The dates he mentioned overlapped with the time she and I were still trying to work things out. I didn't reply. What was the point? I already knew she'd been lying to me. This was just confirmation. By then, anger had replaced sadness. Not the kind of anger that makes you shout. This was quieter, heavier, the kind that sits in your chest like a stone. I started writing things down, little notes to myself about how I felt, what I'd learned. I didn't even know why I was doing it at first, but over time it started to make sense. I was building a record, proof for myself that I wasn't crazy, that I'd been more than patient, that I'd given her more chances than she deserved. One night, I read through the notes and realized something. I hadn't thought about her in hours before that moment. That was progress. Of course, life has a way of testing you the second you start to heal. I ran into her at the grocery store. It was a random Tuesday night, and I was there for milk and bread. I rounded the corner of the cereal aisle, and there she was. Hair longer, wearing that same gold necklace. She froze. I froze. "Hey," she said softly. I nodded, gripping the handle of my basket a little too tight. "Hey." For a second, it felt like we might stand there forever, two ghosts haunting the same space. Then she said, "You look good." "Thanks," I replied, my voice flat. "You too." And that was it. No long conversation, no apology, just nothing. After that grocery store encounter, she started creeping back into my thoughts. Not in the same gut-wrenching way, but more like an itch I couldn't scratch. I'd find myself replaying the moment, wondering if I should have said more. If maybe she'd been waiting for me to open the door just a crack. But the truth was, I didn't owe her anything. A week later, I was out with friends when one of them mentioned seeing her at a club downtown. She was with some guy, they said casually, not knowing it would stick in my head for days. I pictured them together, the way she'd smile, the way she'd lean in close to talk over the music. It didn't hurt like it used to. Instead, it felt distant, like I was watching someone else's life. I started focusing more on my own life. Work was picking up. I got promoted, something I'd been chasing for over a year. My brother and I started hitting the gym together, and I even signed up for a weekend hiking group. One Saturday, while halfway up a trail with a group of strangers, I realized I hadn't thought about Jenna in weeks. That realization hit me harder than I expected. I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying a backpack full of bricks without even knowing it, and suddenly I'd set it down. When we reached the summit, the view stretched out for miles. Rolling hills, a ribbon of river glinting in the sun. For the first time in months, I felt truly present. Of course, just when you think you're over someone, the universe likes to throw curveballs. A mutual friend texted me late one night. Hey, you should probably know Jenna's talking about you online. I asked for screenshots. She'd posted vague, bitter stuff on her socials. Things like, some people can't handle a strong woman making her own money, and funny how people pretend to support you until it doesn't benefit them anymore. It was clear who she was talking about. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I just blocked her on everything. I let her take up enough space in my life. Months went by. Seasons changed. My apartment felt like mine again, not ours. I stopped avoiding the places we used to go. I even went back to that Thai restaurant alone. One night, I ran into the guy from the Instagram messages, the one who said she'd ghosted him. We bumped into each other at a bar, and after a couple of drinks, we swapped stories. It was eerie how similar our experiences were. The charm at the start, the little lies, the way she'd twist things to make you doubt yourself. We both laughed about it, not out of bitterness, but in that way you laugh when you've survived something. Talking to him made me realize something important. Jenna wasn't my problem anymore. She was just a chapter in my story, not the whole book. I started dating again, not rushing into anything, just enjoying meeting new people. And then I met Claire. Claire was different. She asked real questions and actually listened to the answers. She didn't flinch when I told her I'd been through a messy breakup. She just nodded and said, "Sounds like you've learned a lot about yourself." And she was right. Claire and I started seeing each other regularly. It felt easy, natural, in a way I hadn't experienced before. There was no second guessing, no wondering if she was hiding something. One night, we were cooking dinner together when my phone buzzed. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. "Hey, I'm sorry for everything." I didn't need to ask who it was. I showed Claire the message. She just shrugged and said, "You don't have to answer if you don't want to." And I didn't, but curiosity has teeth. A few days later, I found myself scrolling back to that message. Not because I wanted her back, God, no, but because part of me wanted to know if she'd actually changed. I typed out a reply, "I hope you're doing okay." She responded within minutes. "I am. I'm not doing that stuff anymore. I'm in school, working a regular job." We traded a few polite messages, nothing deep. It was strange, like talking to a distant cousin you barely remember. Familiar, but not important. After that, I didn't hear from her again. Weeks turned into months. My life kept moving forward. Claire and I took a trip together, just a weekend away in a little cabin by the lake. One night, sitting by the fire, she asked, "Do you ever think about her?" I thought about lying, but decided against it. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Not in the way I used to, more like remembering a movie I saw a long time ago." She smiled. "Then I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be." And she was right. The truth is, I'll probably always remember Jenna, not because I miss her, but because of what she taught me. About trust, about boundaries, about not losing yourself in someone else's storm. Sometimes I wonder if she tells the story differently. If in her version, I'm the bad guy. Maybe I am. Maybe we're both villains in each other's narratives. But in mine, I'm the guy who finally learned to walk away. Life with Claire was the opposite of life with Jenna. There were no late-night arguments about where she'd been, no second-guessing when she smiled at her phone. It was simple, but in the best way. One afternoon, while we were walking through a weekend market, we passed a booth selling handmade jewelry. Claire picked up a delicate gold necklace and said, "This reminds me of you." I almost froze. The last time I'd seen a gold necklace, it had been Jenna's, flashing under studio lights in a video I wished I could erase from my memory. But this time, the moment felt different. Clean. I bought the necklace for Claire. Months later, I found myself back at that coffee shop, where Jenna and I had once tried to work things out. I was waiting for Claire to meet me after her shift. As I stirred my drink, I noticed someone at the counter. long hair, familiar posture. She turned, and for a moment it was like the universe wanted to test me. Jenna. She saw me. We exchanged a nod. That was all. No wave, no words, no awkward small talk. Just two people who used to know each other now living completely different lives. And it didn't hurt. That night, Claire asked how my day had been. I told her I'd seen Jenna. Did it feel weird? She asked. I thought about it. Not really. It felt final. She smiled and squeezed my hand. Good. That means you're free. I didn't realize how true that was until later, lying in bed with her breathing softly beside me. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of old conversations or unsent messages. I was just here, in the present. One day, I stumbled across an old notebook while cleaning out my closet, the one I'd used to write down my feelings after the breakup. I flipped through the pages, reading things I barely remembered writing. Angry lines. Heartbroken lines. Even a few pathetic ones I cringed at now. But somewhere near the back I found a sentence I'd underlined 3 times. One day this won't hurt anymore. And I realized that day had come. Claire and I started talking about moving in together. It felt fast, but also right. I'd been hesitant to share a space with someone again, but she'd earned my trust in ways Jenna never had. One night, while we were packing boxes at her place, she found an old Polaroid of me from months ago before we met. She laughed and said, "You look so different here, like you were carrying the weight of the world." I smiled. I probably was. The following weekend, we moved into a little apartment with a view of the city. On our first night there, we sat on the balcony with cheap wine, watching the lights. I thought about how far I'd come. From that Thursday night on my couch, staring at my laptop in disbelief, to this quiet evening with someone who actually showed up for me. I didn't say anything about it to Claire. I didn't need to. Some things are better kept as silent victories. Every once in a while, I'll hear someone mention OnlyFans in passing. It doesn't sting anymore. It's just a thing people do, a choice some make. I don't judge it. What hurt wasn't the sight, but the lies. And now I know better. Now I know that when someone really loves you, they'll tell you the truth, even if it's hard, especially if it's hard. Because love without trust, that's not love. That's just a performance waiting for the curtain to fall, and I'm done watching that show. We'll expand on life after Jenna, add more emotional depth, and give your viewers a satisfying sense that the narrator has truly moved on. A few months into living with Claire, I found myself driving past my old neighborhood. I hadn't been there since Jenna and I split. The streets felt smaller somehow, like they'd shrunk in my absence. Out of curiosity, I took the turn down her street. Her apartment building looked the same. Peeling paint on the railing, the same dent in the front gate. But the space that once felt heavy with memory now felt hollow. I slowed as I passed, half expecting to see her stepping out onto the balcony. But there was no sign of her. Instead, a different woman stood there, watering plants, humming to herself. It hit me then. Life had gone on. For her. For me. For the world. The moments I thought were permanent had been replaced, just like furniture in a rented apartment. By the time I drove away, I wasn't sad. If anything, I felt relieved. That chapter was sealed, and the street that once felt like the center of my heartbreak was just another turn on a map I didn't need anymore. Claire and I fell into an easy rhythm at our new place. She had her morning coffee ritual, I had my late-night reading. Sometimes we'd overlap, sometimes we'd give each other space, and neither of us felt insecure about it. One Friday night while cooking dinner, she asked, "Do you think you'll ever talk to her again?" I didn't need to ask who she meant. "No," I said after a moment. "Not because I hate her, just because there's nothing left to say." Claire nodded thoughtfully. "I think that's healthy." And it was. Because in my past relationships, especially with Jenna, conflict had always been this lingering shadow. Even after fights, there was always an undercurrent of, "We're not done yet." With Claire, if we disagreed, we talked about it. No secrets, no cold wars, just conversations. It was so simple it almost felt strange. But maybe that's what love was supposed to be. Quiet, steady, without the constant threat of the ground crumbling beneath you. One evening, we went out to a friend's birthday dinner at a downtown restaurant. It was a lively place, full of music and clinking glasses. Halfway through the night, I noticed a familiar laugh from across the room. I glanced over and froze. Jenna. She was at a table with a group of people I didn't recognize. She looked different. Shorter hair, heavier makeup, but the way she threw her head back when she laughed was exactly the same. Our eyes met for a split second. She gave me a small smile, almost like a peace offering. I nodded politely before turning back to my table. Claire noticed. Friend of yours? Not exactly, I said with a smirk. And that was it. No racing heart, no gnawing questions. Just another face in a crowded room. The encounter stuck with me, not because I still had feelings for her, but because it showed me how far I'd come. A year ago, seeing her would have thrown me into a spiral of overthinking and sleepless nights. Now it barely registered beyond the moment itself. A few days later, I got a message from that same mutual friend who'd sent me the original OnlyFans link. Saw Jenna the other night, it read. She's different. I just replied, people change. And that was the truth. People do change, but not always in the ways you expect. I'd changed too. I'd learned that love wasn't enough if trust wasn't there. I'd learned that no matter how much you want to rewrite the past, it stays the same. The only thing you can change is what you do next. Spring arrived, and with it came a sense of renewal I hadn't felt in years. Claire and I started planning a small trip, a few days by the coast just to get away. While packing, I found an old hoodie stuffed in the back of my closet. It was one of Jenna's, left behind when she moved out. For a moment, I held it, remembering how it used to smell faintly of her perfume. But the scent was long gone, replaced by the neutral mustiness of forgotten fabric. I walked it straight to the donation pile without hesitation. As I dropped it off at a local charity bin, I felt a strange sort of closure. Not dramatic, not tearful, just quiet. The kind that comes when you finally realize some things aren't meant to be carried anymore. Our trip to the coast was exactly what I needed. The air was salty and sharp, the kind that makes you feel cleaner just by breathing it in. Claire and I walked along the shoreline, our shoes in our hands, waves licking at our ankles. At one point she stopped, staring out at the horizon. "Do you ever think about how big it all is?" she asked. "All the time," I said. "Puts everything into perspective." And it did. The ocean stretched endlessly in front of us, swallowing every petty argument, every sleepless night, every ounce of hurt I'd carried. Out here, none of that mattered. That night, we sat on the balcony of our rented cabin, wrapped in blankets, watching the moonlight dance across the water. I realized something important. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop anymore. I wasn't measuring this happiness against some hidden fear that it could disappear. I was living in it. On the last day of our trip, we stopped at a little seaside market. As Claire wandered between stalls, I found myself drawn to a small hand-painted sign that read, "Leave what no longer serves you." It was meant for trinkets, people leaving behind seashells or old postcards, but the words hit me in a deeper place. I thought about all the things I'd let go of this past year: resentment, suspicion, the urge to check someone's phone when they weren't looking. Claire returned with a bag of fresh bread and noticed me staring at the sign. "Thinking about leaving anything?" she teased. "Already have," I said, and I meant it. Back home, life slipped into a comfortable routine again. But every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of my old self. The version of me that used to overanalyze every word, every delay in a text. I'd remember how exhausting it was to love someone you couldn't fully trust. One evening, Claire came home late from work, Traffic had been bad, and she'd stopped to grab groceries. My old instincts, the ones Jenna had trained into me, wanted to question every step she'd taken. But I didn't. Instead, I hugged her, helped her put away the groceries, and we ate dinner together. That was the moment I knew I'd broken the cycle. A few weeks later, I got a wedding invitation in the mail from a mutual friend. Jenna's name wasn't on it, but I knew she'd be there. For a brief moment, I considered skipping it. Why risk reopening a door I'd worked so hard to close? But then I remembered the grocery store, the restaurant, the coffee shop. I'd seen her before and survived. I'd see her again and survive that too. The wedding was beautiful, string lights, laughter, and a dance floor that stayed full all night. Sure enough, she was there, across the room in a pale blue dress. We exchanged a polite nod, nothing more. It was strange how small she looked to me now. Not physically, just in the space she occupied in my life. By the time the night ended, I realized I'd barely thought about her. Most of my attention had been on Claire, on the way she laughed during the speeches, on how her hand found mine when the music slowed. That's the thing no one tells you about healing. It doesn't come with a big, dramatic finale. There's no day when you wake up and think, I'm finally over it. It just happens quietly, in moments you don't even notice until they've passed. And somewhere along the way, Jenna stopped being the person who broke me. She became just another character in the story of how I learned what I truly deserve. Healing, I've learned, is a quiet process. It doesn't arrive in some grand moment of revelation with fireworks and a triumphant soundtrack. It creeps in like the lengthening days after winter, so gradual you hardly notice it, until one evening you step outside and realize the sun is still hanging in the sky, warming your skin in a way you'd forgotten it could. One Tuesday night, I was half distracted, tidying up old files on my laptop. It was the kind of boring task you do when you can't sleep, just clicking and dragging, clearing out old downloads and half-finished documents. Then, nestled between work folders and travel photos, I saw it. A folder with a name I hadn't read in months, just her initials. I knew what was inside before I opened it. Screenshots, messages, photos, proof of old arguments, proof of moments that had hurt so badly I thought I might need to show them to someone, maybe even to myself, just to confirm they'd really happened. Back then, keeping them felt important, like having armor I could put on in case the past came knocking. My hand hovered over the trackpad. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. Part of me wanted to click, to take one last look at the wreckage, maybe to feel that old sting and remind myself how far I'd come. But another part of me knew exactly how that would go. One click would become 10 minutes, 10 minutes would become an hour, and by the end I'd be staring into a past that didn't deserve my attention anymore. So instead, I dragged the folder to the trash. My thumb rested over the delete key for a long second. I pressed it. No ceremony, no dramatic sigh. Just gone. When the folder vanished, the screen returned to the calm blue of my desktop. I sat back, coffee cooling in my hands, waiting for some wave of sadness or nostalgia to crash over me. It didn't, and that, I realized, was the point. A week after the wedding, life slid back into its steady rhythm. The next morning, I made coffee while Claire sat at the table reading the news on her phone, the light from the window catching in her hair. I didn't mention Jenna had been there, not because I was keeping it from her, but because it didn't matter anymore. That's how I knew the wound had closed. A year ago, seeing her in a crowded room would have had me analyzing every glance, wondering if there was some hidden meaning. Now it felt no heavier than walking past someone I used to work with. Just a faint spark of recognition before moving on. That Thursday evening, we were curled up on the couch, half watching some cooking competition on TV. Claire had her legs draped over mine, scrolling through her phone, when she looked up and said, "Do you realize we've never had one of those fights where someone storms out and slams the door?" I smirked. You mean the kind where nothing gets resolved and you both sit in separate rooms, stewing in silence? She laughed. Exactly. The kind where you wonder if you're even on the same team anymore. I thought about it, and the realization made me smile. Yeah, I noticed, and I like it this way. It was a small exchange, the kind most people might forget, but it stayed with me. It was a reminder that the calm we shared wasn't fragile, wasn't just the pause between storms. It was real, sturdy, and worth holding on to. It was a Saturday morning when I woke before Claire. The apartment was quiet except for the low hum of the fridge and the faint whoosh of cars passing on the street below. I slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake her, and padded barefoot to the kitchen. The tiles were cool under my feet. I brewed coffee, the smell drifting through the open balcony door. Mug in hand, I stepped outside. The air was crisp, touched with the faint scent of rain from the night before. The city was stretching awake. Distant traffic, a dog barking somewhere down the block, someone clattering dishes in a nearby apartment. I leaned on the railing and let my mind wander. Years ago, mornings like this felt different. Even when things were good, there was always a tightness in my chest, a low-level dread I couldn't shake. It was like walking on glass, waiting for something sharp to cut through the calm. With Jenna, peace was always temporary. Now, the calm was different. It was steady. The absence of tension was almost startling when I stopped to think about it. No unspoken questions. No checking my phone with that flicker of fear that I'd find something I didn't want to see. I thought about how strange it is that two people can go from sharing everything to knowing nothing about each other's lives. Back then, I'd imagined I'd want answers if we ever crossed paths again. Closure, explanations. But the truth is, some answers don't help. They just pull you back into the wreckage you've worked so hard to walk away from. I heard the kettle click off inside. Claire's footsteps padded toward the kitchen. I smiled, took one last sip of coffee, and went back in. We made breakfast together, moving easily around each other like we'd been doing it for years. For Claire's birthday, I wanted to give her more than just a wrapped gift. I planned a surprise trip, a weekend in a small cabin tucked into the hills, with a wood stove, hiking trails, and no Wi-Fi. I booked it weeks in advance and kept it a secret until the morning we left. When I told her, her face lit up. "You're kidding, we're really going?" On the drive, she played her favorite playlist, singing along in that slightly off-key way that always makes me laugh. At one point, she reached over, resting her hand on mine as the road curved between tall pines. It was such a simple thing, but I felt it all the way through me. Safe, steady, and unspoken. With Jenna, moments like that had been rare, and when they did happen, they were often undercut by doubt. I'd catch myself wondering what she was thinking, what I didn't know. It's exhausting, loving someone while constantly questioning the reality you share. That night, we sat by the fire in the cabin's small living room, the air warm and smelling faintly of burning wood. Claire cupped her mug of tea and studied me for a moment before saying, "You seem lighter these days. Happier?" I smiled into my own mug. "I am," I said simply, and I realized it wasn't an exaggeration, it was the truth. The cabin was quiet in a way you can't get in the city. No TV, no Wi-Fi, no buzzing notifications. At first, I thought I'd miss the distractions, but without them, the nights stretched open in the best way. We talked for hours about childhood, the things we wanted to try someday, the fears we didn't often say out loud. There were pauses, but they were comfortable, filled with the sound of the fire popping in the stove. At one point, Claire asked, "What's the hardest thing you've ever had to let go of?" I hesitated, my eyes on the flames. A relationship. One I stayed in too long. She didn't pry, but I found myself explaining anyway. She wasn't a bad person, but she lied. And once trust is gone, you can't build anything solid. I kept thinking things would get better if I just tried harder. They didn't. Claire reached over and took my hand. Sometimes we hold on because we don't want to believe we've wasted our time. But letting go isn't waste, it's making room. Her words sat with me for the rest of the night. They weren't dramatic or meant to impress, but they were true. 2 weeks after we got back from the cabin, I was at my desk after dinner checking emails when a Facebook notification popped up. It was a friend request from Jenna. I stared at it for a long moment, my cursor hovering over the name. I hadn't seen her profile in months, hadn't even thought about looking. There was no surge of anger, but there was a familiar weight in my chest, like holding a box you thought you'd already thrown out. Curiosity got the better of me. I clicked. Her profile was public. The first thing I noticed was how different she looked. Hair shorter, a few shades lighter, like she'd stepped into a new version of herself. There were photos of her hiking, laughing with friends, standing beside a small dog with one ear flopped down. There were no hints of the life she'd hidden from me back then, no trace of the account that had once been the center of so many sleepless nights. I sat back wondering why she'd reached out. Was it an apology? An attempt to test the waters, or just a reflex, like running your fingers over an old scar? Before I could overthink it, Claire walked in with 2 mugs of tea. She set one beside me, leaned over my shoulder, and glanced at the screen. "Who's that?" "Someone I used to know," I said, closing the tab. And that was all it needed to be. Life kept moving. Work was busy, and the conversations Claire and I had about taking a big trip overseas became more serious. We'd talk about it over dinner, where we'd go, what we'd eat, which cities we'd get lost in first. One late afternoon, walking home from the office, I passed a small cafe. As I stepped through the warm air drifting out of its open door, I caught a whiff of perfume I hadn't smelled in years. The one Jenna used to wear. It hit me like a faint echo, not sharp enough to hurt, but clear enough to bring back an image. Her in front of a mirror, tilting her head as she spritzed her neck before we went out. The memory was vivid for all of 2 seconds. Then it faded, replaced by the sound of someone laughing at a nearby table and the hum of a milk frother behind the counter. Instead of that old, hollow ache, I felt something different. A quiet recognition that this was just a moment, not a trigger. Like hearing the first notes of a song you haven't played in years, smiling at the memory and then letting it go without replaying the track. By the time I reached the corner, my phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Picked up your favorite pasta. Hurry home before I eat it all." And just like that, the past dissolved into the background where it belonged. Summer rolled in with long, warm evenings. Claire and I spent more weekends outside, day trips to small towns, wandering through antique markets, sampling dishes at little restaurants we found by accident. Every one of those days felt like a brick laid into something solid, something we were building together without needing to force it. One evening over dinner, she set her fork down and said, "I think you're the most present person I've ever been with." The comment caught me off guard. "Why do you say that?" "Because you're here," she said simply. "Not stuck in your head, not somewhere else. You're in the moment." I thought about it. That's because I know what it's like to be with someone who pulls you out of it. I used to live like that. It's exhausting. Her smile was warm but knowing, like she understood without me needing to explain further. The truth was, she was right. The old me would have been half in the room and half in some spiral of wondering what I didn't know, bracing for impact. Now I was fully here, and I realized that's the kind of presence you only get when you've finally stopped holding on to what's gone. Healing, I've learned, is a quiet process. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with trumpets or a final cinematic moment. It's like the slow stretch of daylight after winter. You don't notice until you step outside one evening and see the sky still glowing. One night, while clearing old files on my laptop, I found a folder tucked deep in a corner I rarely checked. It was labeled with her initials. My chest tightened before I even clicked it. I knew what was inside: screenshots, messages, fragments of arguments I'd once thought I needed to save. Proof of things that had kept me awake at night. Proof I thought I might someday have to show to someone, maybe even to myself, to confirm that I wasn't imagining it all. I sat there with my finger resting on the trackpad, debating. One part of me wanted to open it, to scroll through each piece and remember how far I'd come. But another part knew that if I went in, I'd start picking at scars that had already healed. So I dragged the folder to the trash. My thumb hovered over the delete key for a long second. Then I pressed it. No ceremony, no dramatic sigh, just gone. The desktop appeared again, clean and unbothered. I sat back, coffee cooling in my hands, waiting for the rush of sadness or nostalgia. It never came. Months later, a postcard arrived in my mailbox. No return address, just a glossy photo of a lake at sunset, the sky streaked orange and pink. On the back, in handwriting I knew instantly, were 5 words. I'm glad you're happy. Take care. I stood there for a moment, leaning against the kitchen counter, reading it twice. There was no sting, no sudden ache. Just the acknowledgement of something that once mattered and now simply didn't. I thought about throwing it away, but instead I slid it into the back of a drawer, not as something to revisit, but as a quiet bookmark in a chapter I'd already finished. That evening, I joined Claire in the kitchen as she chopped vegetables for dinner. The smell of garlic and fresh herbs filled the air, mingling with the soft hum of music from the radio. I tucked the postcard from my mind and focused on the moment, on the person standing beside me, on the meal we were making together, on the warmth in the room. The past had given me lessons. The present was giving me peace. And for the first time in years, I knew which one I wanted to keep. And that's where we'll leave it for tonight, my Reddit story lovers. This one was a journey through love, betrayal, and finding peace again. Thanks for staying with me right to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe to Bedtime Blocks, and share your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, sleep well and dream easy.